My name is John Delaney, and I'm the Commission's designated presiding officer for this hearing. Today is September 27th, 2023, and it's approximately 10:34 a.m. And this is the time and the date that is scheduled for the evidentiary hearing on the formal complaint of Ronda and Martell Menlove against Bridgerland Water Company, docket number 23-001-03. Everybody in the correct place?
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves until they are intending to speak. There's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll get into some more later, but for now, just so we don't have background noise unnecessarily. So please mute yourself unless you are ready to talk. To the Menloves, I'm able to see who I've identified as Rob Wilson and Tana Henninger, as well as Christina, the court reporter. I'm not able to see you all via video. Do you have your video off?
We're trying to get the video to work and it doesn't work. We are connected audibly, but the video is not working at this time.
Okay.
So we don't use WebEx regularly. We use other platforms, and we were not prepared for this. We've tried to log into the meeting for the last half hour and weren't able to check technology. So I apologize about that.
Oh, that's fine. Do you want to continue to try to make sure that you can appear by way of video? That is, would you like to take a break for a few minutes and allow you to perhaps log off and log back on through the link that was sent via the email and see if that can restore your settings? Or would you like to just proceed without video?
I think we're okay proceeding without video.
Yeah, it's going to take more. We're going to have to figure out why we're not getting it, and it's some setting on our laptop. So we'll just proceed.
Okay. Let me ask Bridgerland Water Company, is that acceptable to you, that they don't appear via video and you all do?
Sure, that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we just had one other person join us from the Division of Public Utilities. Okay. All right. With all that being said, let me start with appearances and then I will address some preliminary matters. But if we can have appearances, please. So from at this point, I'd like to know who is here on behalf of the Menloves.
This is Martell Menlove.
Ronda Menlove and Ronda Menlove.
And we're the only one.
I'm sorry, you got cut off.
We are the only ones that are here on our behalf.
Okay, thank you very much. And then present on behalf of Bridgerland Water Company, please.
Yeah, so Tana Henninger and Rob Wilson. My mother just texted me saying she was having difficulty connecting, but she just was going to watch the proceedings, so it's okay if she's not on. So just Rob and I representing Bridgerland Water Company.
Okay, thank you. Does the Division of Public Utilities wish to make an appearance at this time?
No, we are not going to participate in the hearing. We're just observing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, a few more preliminary matters that hopefully will make life easier for everybody, including the most critical person here, which is Christina, our court reporter. First of all, I mean, before we get going, have the parties resolved this dispute, or is it still ongoing? Let me hear from.
It's not resolved. Sorry. Oh.
Let me hear from the Menloves first.
It is not resolved, no.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Henninger, you concur with that?
Yes, I concur.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a court reporter with us this morning, and she is going to be transcribing everything that is being said while it's being said. So this is real time. She's very good at her job, but it's a difficult job. So I want to put down a few ground rules to make sure that we get a clean record and that Christina has a opportunity to do the best job she can. So very important is, first of all, please do not answer yes or no with a head nod or a head shake. Menloves, we couldn't see you do that anyway, so you will have to make sure you verbalize a yes or a no if a yes or a no is required. Same with Mr. Wilson and Ms. Henninger. No head shakes or nods, yeses or nos. The second thing is please speak as clearly as you can. Again, the court reporter is transcribing this in real time. There may be an occasional audio blip since we're doing this remotely. So the clearer you can speak, the better. If we do experience an audio blip, I may say, I need you to repeat it. I didn't hear you. However, also the court reporter may interrupt us and say that she too could not hear, so please repeat. Another rule here, please don't speak too fastly or quickly. Speak at a normal pace so that the transcription can occur as appropriate. The last one is please do not interrupt anybody who is speaking. I know that's a little more difficult on a remote situation because we don't have a lot of body language cues that are usually available when we're in person. But at the end of the day, the court reporter cannot take down two conversations at once. And so we must not interrupt each other or speak over each other as best as we can. And if we make mistakes, we'll try to reset and start again. That's going to become particularly important when I ask questions that I may have. I don't know that I will have any, but when I have them, please, I will try to do my best to direct the question to a specific individual to then articulate slowly and clearly that question and then stop and allow the person I posed the question to answer. That may also happen if there's any questioning by the parties of each other. So let's just slow down and try to take it easy and make sure we don't interrupt anybody. Is all that relatively clear? Do you have any questions about that?
No, it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah, no questions from us.
Thank you very much. Well, then we're at the jumping off point, and since this is the Menloves complaint, I'd like to hear from one of you first, and then we'll hear from one person from Bridgerland, and then there may be some questions. But we will begin with the Menloves, and if you will, tell me who it is that will speak on behalf of the Menloves, testify on behalf of the Menloves at this point.
So this is Martell. I will begin with our testimony. First of all, we appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. We
Mr.
appreciate.
Menlove, I'm sorry. I just wanted to know who it is that's speaking. So it's going to be you, not Ronda at this point, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. Would you like to be sworn in?
Would that be helpful?
Sworn testimony is better because it is taken as you're under oath, and so it's got to be true.
Sure, be glad to.
Okay. So, Mr. Martell Menlove, do you swear to tell the truth here today?
I do.
Okay, you are sworn in, so now please proceed.
First of all, let me apologize. We made a mistake in some of the communication that we submitted In a conversation recently with Steve Watterson, I mentioned the line freezing previously in 2021, and he noted to me that it was actually 2019 when the line froze previously. So I sent an email, I think on the 15th of September, apologizing for that and stating that. So some of what I have submitted previously will need to be, anyway, just note that that date is wrong. I would like to begin by starting with what happened in 2019, if I might. We are the only full-time residents on the cul-de-sac that we live on. In 2019, Mr. Ted Wilson approached us and asked us if we would run water for him to help with the line not freezing. We indicated we'd be glad to do that, and sometime in late December, early January of 2019, we ran what Mr. Wilson at that time requested, basically a straw full of water, okay? We ran that water 24/7. We not only ran the water, we also monitored the temperature of the water. We reported that frequently to Mr. Wilson. When the water temperature got low, Mr. Wilson would have someone come and flush the lines, open the fire hydrants. There are 2 fire hydrants near our home, one of them about 200 feet from our home back towards the source of the water, the other one about 200 feet away from our home, away from the source of the water. They would frequently flush one or both of those, most frequently the one that was further down the line to make sure that the warm water was coming through. However, in spite of our efforts in running water 24/7 at that time, sometime in February of 2019, the line in front of our house froze. It froze while we were running a trickle of water, a small stream of water, whatever. Mr. Wilson was very apologetic. He came to our home. The first time he came to our home, he brought some 5-gallon jugs of water with him, so we would have water to do some of those necessities. He also brought bottled water that he had purchased and gave that to us. Mr. Wilson, and frequently accompanied by his wife Dixie, came to our home, I think, every week and checked on us, frequently bringing water to us. Mr. Wilson tried to connect the 2 fire hydrants, the one which was still live and the one which was dead, with our home sitting between them. He tried to connect those with an extended piece of PEX line, and I don't remember exactly why that didn't work, but that didn't work. The line, the hydrant behind our home, he left open during the whole time so that we would know when the line became unfrozen. I don't remember the date that it came on, the frost left the line. It was a Sunday, I know. We returned home from church and can see water coming out of the line, out of the hydrant, down the line from our home. We came into our home, the water worked fine. And I'd also note that we've had this home since 1990 something. We haven't lived here full time. It was a second home. We've lived here full time since it's been our primary residence since 2015. We were not here for 2 years in 2015 to 2017. And we've been out of our home a few times since then, but this is our primary residence. We've lived here, and never has our personal line frozen, okay? As has been noted, Mr. Wilson told us that he would put some additional gravel on the road. We did leave our home in late June or early July that year in 2019 to do some humanitarian service in Cairo, Egypt. We were not here when the road was raised. We didn't see that happen. What I can tell you is that the gravel it's my opinion that the gravel that has been added to the road is not 16 inches. There may be a foot right at the base of our driveway, which is basically the low spot of the road. And then it feathers from there, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet away from our driveways, where it feathers to where there's no gravel, no additional road base that has been added to the road. I might also note with that the freeze point in this is somewhere between our neighbor, between us and the hydrant, the line that serves our house and the hydrant. It is not between us and the neighbor, because every time the line has frozen, he has been without water also. And so although the road was raised, it's my opinion that the significant amount of raise that should have occurred there didn't occur where we anticipate the freeze might be. And honestly, I don't know where that freeze is. It is approximately 150 feet from the hydrant that has not frozen to the neighbors. It is another 70 feet from the neighbors to where I believe ours is hooked on. And again, I don't know exactly where those are. As I'm looking at those measurements, I'm looking perpendicular from where the water boxes are and assuming that the connection is somewhere near there. So although the road was raised, and again, obviously from the fact that the water froze again this year, the solution, although we believe Mr. Wilson and had no reason not to believe him, the solution obviously has not occurred this year. On the 21st of February of this year, we drove to Logan for something that's about a 35-mile drive. Between the 1st of January and that day, we ran water some days in our home. Mostly we ran a trickle of water at night when it was extremely cold. I was probably more concerned with the water freezing where the connection comes through our garage and into our home than I was anyplace else. I can tell you that we received the letter from Bridgerland Water Company that fall. We read the letter. It's our contention that the letter is meant as a precaution about our individual lines freezing, not about their lines freezing. I can tell you the letter, which Ms. Henniger has shared with all of you, I think even yesterday, says nothing in that letter about their lines freezing or us running a trickle of water to help their lines from freezing. It does talk about 200 cabins freezing. It talks about most cabins in the winter are just fine with running a little water. It does talk about insulating your own box so that your line doesn't freeze, but it says nothing about running water to help their lines not freeze. And so I had no intention in January and February this year of running water as an asset or as a help to Bridgerland Water Company. I'd also note that even in Ms. Henniger's response, she indicated that she says, we will still recommend that homeowners leave a trickle of water at their own residence in order to keep their personal lines open. And again, so we saw the letter, we read the letter, but we did not assume that letter meant that we were to help them. On the 21st of February, when it froze, I sent an email at 8:52 that night to Ms. Henniger. I made a phone call to the company number. There was no answer, but there was a voice message left. At 9:38 that night, Mr. Rob Wilson called back. I appreciate his quick response. His first response to me was, Martell, it's probably your line that is frozen, not our line that is frozen, because we have Steve Randall running water at the end of the line to keep the line from freezing. I said, well, Rob, I don't know whose line it is, But I said, what I can tell you is we don't have water. Within a few days, within a day or two, it was determined that it was the Bridgerland water line that was frozen, not our line that was frozen. The next day, I got a phone call back from Rob Wilson. He said they were looking at various options to restore the water immediately. We went through some options. He talked about coming and trying to change some pressure in the line to see if they could move that. He talked about some hot water process whereby they could shoot hot water into the line to thaw it out. Anyway, we talked about multiple things that might happen. On the 24th of February, Mr. Wilson came to our home. He tried to open the lines to see if some pressure change would free them up. That did not happen. He came to our home, I can tell you. There was some water jugs sitting at the bottom of our steps. We entered our home through the basement level. There were some water jugs sitting there. He volunteered to carry those up the steps. I allowed him to do that because I'd had back surgery just on the 6th of January. We talked further about what would happen, about what we might be able to do. And I should note that at that point in time, Mr. Wilson said to us, and my wife is here and can testify to this also, we probably should have been flushing those lines, but we couldn't find anyone to do it. Okay? From there, we talked about some other options. Rob Wilson volunteered to hire a clean water truck and park it in our yard. We asked him to follow up on that. He contacted us a few days later and said, I can't find one. We had several conversations about other options. I asked if Bridgerland Water would be willing to buy a large, not a large, 100-gallon, 200-gallon tank to put in our garage. We were told no, they would not be willing to do that. If we could buy one, if we could find one that we could rent, they would consider renting that for us. We talked about hooking a pump to that exterior tank and pumping water into our home so we'd have water in our system again. Again, the response was, if you can rent a pump to do that, we'll consider renting a pump, but we will not buy a pump for you to do that. Upon further conversation with other people, we decided that we did not want external water into our home. We were told that the possibility existed that if we took external water and pumped it into our home, it could contaminate our water, our pipes, and create significant problems for us in the future. So we made the decision that we would not do that, that we would continue to simply haul water to flush the toilets, that we would buy water to drink, we'd buy water to wash vegetables, and to do all of those type of things. Okay? On the 27th of February, we had a phone call with Steve Watterson, who is the neighbor. He called inquiring about the situation. He told us that he had been on a three-way call with he and Steve Randall, and that during that call, Rob also acknowledged that they should have been flushing the hydrants to keep the water temperature up, but they couldn't do it because they couldn't find anyone to do that. We then, that same day, called Mr. Randall to confirm that. Mr. Randall confirmed the same thing that Mr. Watterson had said to us. That was on the 27th. Basically, from then until into March, we had no conversation with Rob Wilson. Again, we tried looking at some other things, but there was just nothing there that seemed to work. Finally, on the 5th of May, I sent a message to Mr. Wilson, to Rob Wilson, saying to him, hey, I've been out scraping the road to try to clear the ice and snow off the road, hoping that the bare ground would thaw faster. I said, you know, the road is clear. There's no snow where we think the freeze is. And he said, okay, let's come up and dig. On the 12th of April, Mr. Wilson came up here. We met with Mr. Darren Lutz. We agreed that Bridgerland would begin
12th of May.
on the 12th of May, excuse me, that they would start the next week to dig that up. We put an X out in the road. We said that they would go up to 200 feet on both sides of that. Within the next day or two, the blue stakes, red stakes, blacks, those people all came and marked the road so that they could proceed with digging. But on the 15th of May, the water came back on. Okay. We conversed with Rob again at that point in time. He said they'd still come up and start working on it. Nothing happened. We didn't hear back from them. Again, we had some phone calls, but there was not much happening between that time. Around the 12th of June, I received a text, and again, this is documented in text messages that I still have. I received a text from Rob Wilson that said two things in it, basically. It said, you didn't run the water when we told you to, therefore it's your fault the pipe froze. And we've already had a complaint with the Public Service Commission. They've denied Mr. Watterson's request for some reimbursement. Therefore, we're sure that they're going to deny any request you might submit. So we're not going to reimburse you any further than simply not charging you for the water which you didn't have access to at the time. I said, well, I don't think that's hardly fair. We then got back from Mr. Wilson, and he said, okay, we've decided not to charge you for the 4 months that even where the water was only off for a part of those months. The other thing that happened at that time is I said to Mr. Wilson, we'd like to know who the engineers are for this project so we can talk with them and be assured that what you're going to dig up and fix here is really going to be a fix. Again, I sent a text message to Rob Wilson. His response to me was, please send me your email, Martell. I sent him my email. His response to me was some text that was intended for someone else, and then another text that said, sorry, that text wasn't meant for you. And then that was the last of the text messages that we received from Mr. Rob Wilson at that time. So with the three situations, with them saying, we're not going to reimburse you, it's your fault, the PSC isn't going to help you because we already have been to them and we know we're helping you more than they're even going to allow. And then the refusal of allowing us to know who or what the engineering firm was being, we decided to take some additional action. Up to that point in time, we had not done anything. I think we've tried to be cooperative. We tried to be helpful. We tried to be patient. But when those three things happened, we said, hey, we need to take some additional steps. We then contacted the governor's office, Mike Maurer in the governor's office, told Mr. Maurer what we were doing. The very next day, we received a notice from Thad LeVar, the commission chair. Right honestly, the email we received from Mr. LeVar was not very encouraging. He indicated that Bridgerland was already taking some things to increase circulation, which really doesn't impact the dead-end line that we live on, and that he thought that the letter that they had sent out was sufficient. So at that point in time, we drafted a letter to Mr. LeVar outlining what we thought were our concerns. We sent that letter to Mr. LeVar. That letter is now on the docket as the formal complaint. It contains concerns about reimbursement. It contains concerns about the engineering. And it contains some concerns that we are also some additional frustrations that we have experienced and some concerns we had with Bridgerland Water. That is how the complaint came to be. The rest of what's happened is basically documented on the docket. But again, we would still, maintain the position that the letter that was sent out on September 10th of 2022 really was not intended for us to help them. Mr. Steve Randall ran water for Bridgerland Water Company. He was running water the day the line froze. Okay? He told me just last week when I spoke to him that he ran water until the line froze. So I don't think that simply us running water, it didn't make a difference in 2019. I don't think it would have made a difference in 2021. And right honestly, I think there are multiple places where Bridgerland Water has some culpability here. We've asked that, was the line really laid deep enough when it was laid? Who was the contractor that laid the line? Was there any inspections that we can see when the line was laid? I think there's some real culpability here on the part of Bridgerland Water, and yet they want to blame it on us because one afternoon when we ran to Logan, we didn't have water running in our home. So that would probably be our opening statement. I can tell you that we are current on our bill with Bridgerland Water. We've paid all of the water that we've been billed for this year. Our biggest concern at this point in time is really not some reimbursement, although we believe that some reimbursement is appropriate. Our biggest concern is that the line be fixed and that it be fixed properly. I find it interesting that in May, when Rob Wilson was up here, he said, we're going to dig this up. We're going to insulate the line. We're going to, I think the word he used was shade the line, if that's the right terminology. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. And again, in Ms. Henniger's response to the initial complaint, she said, and this is dated June 22nd. She said, quote, because the cul-de-sac in which the Menloves live has had freezing issues before, we have discussed this issue at length as a board and are making plans to eradicate this issue. We hope. We have hired a company to dig up that problem area, and we're going to place a foam insulation on top of the line, as well as the stub lines for the Menloves and other cabins attached at that point. However, it's interesting that in her response to our formal complaint dated July 17th, now Ms. Henniger says that what they're going to do is put a bleeder at the end of the cul-de-sac as a way to circulate water. Although a bleeder may solve the problem, we would hope that the problem is solved the best way, not the easiest way, not the cheapest way. And we've been given Rob Wilson and was told that Bridgerland Water would make every correction necessary to assure that their pipes would never freeze in the future. So anyway, that's our biggest concern right now. Again, some type of compensation we think might be owed to us, but the biggest concern is that the water be fixed. Update on that, we were told that process would start the week after Labor Day. We were patient the week after Labor Day. The week after that, I sent a message to Mr. Rob Wilson and said, any update on when you're going to fix this? His response was waiting on Lutz. I assume Lutz is the company that they're going to have do it. And to this date, there has been nothing happen to fix this problem. It is still, nothing's there. There's been no one here. No one's looked at it. No one has given us any update. We have no idea what I mean, we can assume from their latest response that all they're planning to do is put a bleeder at the end of the line, but we honestly don't know what Bridgerland's intent is to fix this problem, although we've been told multiple times that they would dig the line up, make sure it was fixed, and they would be taken care of. I think that ends at least my testimony and comments for this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Menlove. Mrs. Menlove, do you have anything to add at this point?
The only thing I would add is that,
I'm sorry, ma'am. If so, I'd like to
Okay.
swear you in.
Yeah.
So
yes,
I'm sorry. Let me start again. Mrs. Menlove, do you have anything to add at this point?
yes,
Okay, let me swear you in. Mrs. Menlove, do you swear to tell the truth today in this proceeding?
yes.
Thank you very much. You're now sworn in. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The only thing I would add is we have tried to work with the Wilsons on this. When we didn't have water, we took initiative, found a place to go to shower, to do laundry, do those kinds of things. And I think we've tried to be team players in this situation and would like to continue to be. And our biggest concern is this doesn't happen again. And it's happened twice. The first time with their father leading the way, we were able to get through that situation with assurance that it would be taken care of. Now, the second time it wasn't taken care of. And so my main concern is that this be taken care of in a way that will be fixed and that we have some assurance that this is truly viable and reasonable kind of fix so that it's verified by someone or some practice that's validated that our water will not continue to freeze. I have significant concerns about fire safety in the winter, and I will tell you it was, on a personal note, very stressful to me not to be able to have my children and grandchildren in our home for the winter months. They come here traditionally on a regular basis. So there's a personal aspect of it in that concern and anxiety about fire. And then, this is just a broad life issue for us that we would like to have resolved. This is our home. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Menlove. Let me now ask Bridgerland Water Company, it's now your opportunity, one at a time, to what's called cross-examination or cross-examine the witnesses that have now testified on behalf of the Menloves. So if you would like to, you may ask questions of Mr. or Mrs. Menlove. And if you would like to, please tell me who will be asking at least the initial questions. So would you, Mr. Wilson, would you like to ask any questions of Mr. Menlove?
No, I do have some comments, but I don't have any questions.
Okay, and you will have an opportunity along with Ms. Henninger when you all can make your presentation. So at this point, it's cross-examination is designed to question what was just talked about or testified about by either Mr. Menlove or Mrs. Menlove. So, Mr. Wilson, I've asked you if you wanted to ask Mr. Menlove any questions. Would you like to ask Mrs. Menlove any questions?
No, not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Henninger, would you like to ask any questions of Mr. Menlove?
No, not at this time.
Okay, and same question as to Mrs. Menlove. Would you like to ask Mrs. Menlove any questions, Mrs. Henninger?
No.
Okay. Okay, I have some questions for either one of Mr. or Mrs. Menlove. Be patient with me for a second because your presentation was very thorough from both of you. And I believe that you likely answered some of the questions I had in advance of this hearing. I may ask a question that sounds like you've already addressed it. Be patient with me and just answer the question. It's not my intention to duplicate it, but I may at times duplicate. One question I wanted to ask is, you acknowledged the receipt of the September 10th letter. And let me ask you this, Mr. Menlove. When you received that letter, but before what I call the freezing event, which I believe based on Mr. Menlove's testimony is established as February 22nd, 2023. So between the time of receipt of the September letter and the freezing event of February 2023, did you respond in any way to Bridgerland Water Company regarding what the letter said, requested, or otherwise represented to you?
No, I did not.
Okay. Mrs. Menlove, I'd like to ask you the same question. I'm happy to repeat it, or you could just answer it based on what I've already asked Mr. Menlove.
Yes, no, we did not send any response.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Delaney, I believe the freeze date was the 21st of February, not the 22nd, if that makes a difference.
Well, thank you for the clarification. I had meant to say the 21st. I thought I said the 21st. If I said the 22nd, I misspoke. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's the good thing about the court reporter. She'll get the wrong date and the right date. Okay, thank you though. As I was looking at the letter that, by the way, your testimony, Mr. Menlove, was accurate. We received that letter, the September 10th letter, a copy of that, last night via email. And what I noticed in that letter was an additional suggestion. And it was with respect to putting a garbage bag with insulation in your meter hole. I think was the exact articulation. So my question, Mr. Menlove, is did you act on that recommendation or something similar to?
Approximately 20 years ago, I did, as per recommendation at that time of Mr. Ted Wilson, put some insulation in a garbage bag and put it in my meter hole. I have not had that meter hole open since then. I don't know if the bag is still there or not, but I did not do anything as a result of this message this year.
Okay, so your answer to my question is no.
Yes, no.
And Mrs. Menlove, did you put a garbage bag with insulation in your meter hole or anything similar to that as recommended in the letter this year? I'm sorry, in 2022, 2023?
No, I did not do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this line of questioning is going to get a little bit technical, maybe. As you saw in the initial notice for this hearing, I had outlined some questions that I want some clarification on. And it has to do with the first set of distinctions, as I call them, that I'd like some clarification on is the difference between personal lines and on one side, and then on the other side, either main lines or what is also referred to as BWC's lines. So with that context, let me ask Mr. Menlove some questions, okay? You had said, you've said in some filings and you testified today that you assumed that the request to run some water was to protect your own line or your personal line from freezing. Does that sound right?
That's accurate.
Okay. Where did you get information that provided you the basis to make that assumption?
It is my understanding that there is a meter in our meter box. Anything from that meter to my home is my personal line. Anything on the other side of that meter belongs to the Bridgerland Water Company and is their responsibility.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very helpful clarification. You just really you really did split that very, very nicely, and that's a question I'll ask you later. But my question here is, why, when you got the letter, did you think, or to use your word, assume that the purpose of running the water or the trickle was only as it related to your line from the meter to your house?
The letter does not say anything about Bridgerland water lines running water, other than it does say that they're working on some circulators to help their system. Okay?
Okay.
So when I got the letter and it talks about 200 cabins freezing, it talks about cabins in the winter are just fine if they leave a little water running. My assumption was that the concern addressed in the letter was for my personal lines, not for Bridgerland's lines.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mrs. Menlove, I'd like to ask you the same question, unless you can just say that your assumption was based on the same information that was just testified to.
My assumption was the same as my husband's.
Okay, thank you very much. And based on the same sort of.
Yes, based upon the same letter.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Menlove, you testified earlier, and I see this also in the filings. I'm trying to get a sense from your perspective, especially based on the distinction that you just made momentarily ago about the personal lines being from the meter to your house and BWC's lines or the main lines being on the other side of the meter. Given that distinction, do you know, did your personal line freeze on February 21st, 2023?
I don't believe our personal line has ever frozen since it was installed in the early 1990s.
Okay. Now, you said I don't believe, and I guess my question was, do you know whether your line, personal line, froze on February in this February freezing event?
I do not know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because water not coming to my house can either be because my line froze or their line froze.
Okay.
What I know is that all of my neighbors did not have water either. And it doesn't seem likely that 5 different homes would all have their personal lines freeze on the same day.
Okay, thank you very much. You've clarified some of your earlier testimony because you had testified that you weren't certain where the freeze point was, I think was the phrase you used, freeze point. And I wanted to circle back and make sure that I understood that testimony as it related to my specific question. So thank you. And I'd like to ask the same question of Mrs. Menlove. Mrs. Menlove, do you have any knowledge of where this freeze occurred? Was it in your personal line?
I do not have that knowledge, and I confirm the testimony that my husband has given about that. I helped communicate with neighbors at that very same time, so I was part of that process and heard the same information from our neighbors.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, another question, Mr. Menlove. Do you have any knowledge or information that running a trickle, or I guess I'm just going to call it trickle because that's kind of the vernacular that has been used. Running a trickle could in fact impact the lines beyond your personal line. And it's a technical question, so I'm happy to rephrase it because I'm not a technical person and I want to make clear that you understand it.
So in my communications with Ted Wilson in 2019, he indicated that my running water would impact Bridgerland Water Company lines.
Okay. And that happened in 2019,
Yes,
and that was the first freezing event, the one that you have corrected your earlier submissions concerning the dates, the years, correct?
yes.
Okay. Did he explain how, or do you recall whether he explained how you running water at your house affects the bigger system?
Okay, it is my understanding that moving water is less likely to freeze than non-moving water. And that if you move enough water, it won't freeze. I have been told by other people that to move enough water, I believe what we have is a 6-inch line in our road, okay, which is another issue we can talk about. But I believe what we have is a 6-inch line in our road. At least one person I've spoke to said to stop a 6-inch line from freezing, you're probably going to need to run an outside hose at almost full capacity, a 3/4 inch hose at almost full capacity. So that's my understanding. I don't have the technical expertise to tell you how much water needs to be run to stop a 6-inch line from freezing. No.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your attempts to jog your recollection about what you do know. Let me move off of that. Okay. Now,
May I add one thing?
sure.
I do know that running basically a straw full of water into a bathroom sink in our house in 2019 did not stop the line from freezing, the main line from freezing.
Okay.
I know that.
Okay. And just to be clear, do you see the recommendation or direction in the September 10th letter to recommend that you run a straw full of water in your bathroom sink?
I do not. No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. A new distinction, if you will. And I guess before I move into this new distinction, let me ask Mrs. Menlove, just generally, do you have anything to add to what Mr. Menlove has testified about based on my questions that I just asked him on this personal line, main line questions?
I will just add that we followed the recommendation in 2019 exactly as we were asked, and our water froze.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so this new distinction is about flushing. And yeah, I'm sorry if I'm being too precise about this, but there is language that is used that confuses me. And it could, because it talks about line flushing and it talks about flushing hydrants. And what I heard based in Mr. Menlove's presentation may have cleared it up a little bit in my head, but I want to confirm it. So, Mr. Menlove, you have made, or you or Mrs. Menlove have made an assertion that that Bridgerland flushed our line on a regular basis during winter to bring warm water into the lines. Now, based on that language, what do you mean by the line?
So the line is the Bridgerland line.
Okay.
For a number of years, we observed an individual by the name of Brandon Weatherstone, who was an employee of Bridgerland Water Company, come along our road weekly during the winter and open up fire hydrants and take the temperature of the water coming out of those fire hydrants and leave the water running in the fire hydrants, flushing the line per se, until the temperature of the water reached a certain point wherein he would close the hydrant, but would come back the next week or several days or whatever. I don't know exactly the interval, but that process would happen multiple times every winter. The other thing I can add to you that I don't know if I added in my initial testimony is that in the winter of 2022, 2023, we were here full time, and I did not observe anyone engage in that activity that I just explained to you during that period of time. In other words, I don't know that this line was flushed anytime in December 2022, January 2023, or February 2023. And typically you can tell when that happens because when the water runs, it melts the snow. You can also see where someone has dug out the hydrant, someone has moved to the hydrant. So it's something that is easy to observe if it's happened. And I did not observe that happening in December 2022, January 2023, or February 2023.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just want to ask the question then one other way, and I'll pose it just to Mr. Menlove. When you in your submissions talk about flushing, you are never talking about your personal lines, as we have made that distinction today, which is from the meter to your house. You have not intended that flushing to be applied to your personal line, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Menlove, What in your mind, and this is technically speaking, what does flushing do to prevent potential line freezing?
We live a considerable distance from the source of the water that we receive. The temperature at the source of the water, and again, this was taught to me by Ted Wilson in 2019, the temperature at the source of the water is typically higher than the temperature in our line. And so what flushing would do would bring warmer water into the line, expelling the colder water, and therefore inhibit freezing.
Okay, thank you. And the basis for that understanding was conversations you had with Mr. Ted Wilson
With Mr. Ted Wilson.
back in 2019.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me one second, I'm just reviewing my notes. Okay, at this point, I don't have any other questions for now. So thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Menlove. We will now turn to Bridgerland Water and allow them to make their, provide testimony as they see fit. After which, you, Mr. and Mrs. Menlove, will similarly have a chance to ask questions of those witnesses. And then I too then will have an opportunity to ask questions as well. So on the Bridgerland side, who is going to provide the testimony?
I will to start.
Okay, wonderful. Ms. Henninger,
Delaney, do
pardon
you
me?
mind if we take a quick break? This is a good place to take a quick break, Mr. Delaney.
That's fine. Let's, is 5 minutes enough?
Yes, that's fine for me.
Okay, folks, it's 11:36 according to my computer. Please be back here by 11:41, okay? Thank you. Just walk away. As I was saying before the break, it's now Bridgerland Water Company's opportunity to testify. It has identified that Ms. Henninger or Gurr, I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing that because of somebody I grew up with, will be testifying to begin with on behalf of Bridgerland. I'm going to swear in the witness. So Ms. Henninger, do you swear to tell the whole truth here today?
Yes.
Okay, you are sworn. Please proceed.
So let me start back with 2019. So, well, actually before that, my father established this company in 1974 and has been running it. And about 2019-ish to 2020, his health declined enough where he asked us three children, me, Mike, and Rob Wilson, all to step in and help him. And so we were helping sort of for a while, and then we realized that he just could not do it, not physically and not mentally. So his recollection of 2019 is that it did freeze on that place, and he, according to him, which he's not very reliable and therefore is not one of our witnesses, did say that he added some road base on that road, and he felt that did the trick, and for a few years, I guess it did. We do not deny that it froze in 2023 this February. In fact, we're very pained by it. We also had another place freeze down in G, and so we've been dealing with those homeowners as well down there. So we did have some freezing issues and have had in the past, and we don't deny that. We sent the letter in September as a precaution. So we have main lines, and then we have personal lines. And never did we intend that asking people to run personal lines so that we keep all the mains open. We would never just rely on that. And so the Martell, the Menloves are correct. We do not expect people to run their personal lines just to, so that we don't have to do our job. Our job is to flush fire hydrants, keep the water flowing, try to do the, keep that water from sitting and settling. And according to the information we've gotten, not only from my father, but from other people, that by drawing that water through, that water that is running is less likely to freeze. And so we watch the temperature of the water as we're flushing. We check the temperature to see if we can draw enough water to warm it up a little, and we watch the flow, and we do all those kinds of things. We have had a guy, Brandon, to do that for us, and then he informed us this last year he would not be doing it. So my brother Rob did it, and he did flush. He flushed in multiple places on multiple weekends, and I will let him testify to the specifics on that road. But according to him, he was up there flushing. How people feel like, that Rob said, we have no one to do it. No one's doing it. No, we had no one to do it, so we were doing it. And we were up there flushing. And so we were doing that. Now, recall that in 2019, the Menloves were running water and Ted was flushing, and it still froze. So, I wish I could say we have the perfect formula to keep this from happening, because we would absolutely do it. So given that it did freeze on Cedar Ridge and it did freeze down in Plat G, we initially did say, okay, we'll dig it up, we'll bury it, we'll put foam on it, we'll do all of these things. But luckily, we've had some time to do some research, and we've had 3 different people, and I'm going to name them specifically. So Riley from Garden City, who's their water master, and Mike from the Utah Water Association, and then Darren Lutz, have all said the better thing than digging up all the lines and burying them deeper is to put a continual bleeder at the end of these cul-de-sacs that are tend to be longer. And so that's why we have changed our position to be, now we feel like putting a bleeder is the better solution. It's not the easier, it's not the cheaper. We're not doing that. We're very interested in fixing it and hopefully getting a solution that is permanent. And as we struggle to learn this business, from just kind of being handed it to us, and we try to do our research and we try to talk to the experts. This is what we have concluded. And so I will admit that we have changed our stance, but we feel like that this is the better stance. As far as timing, Darren Lutz, who is the only excavator over there, and we try to be really nice to him, he has assured us that this will be done this season. I don't control him, but he has assured us, and we are hoping that that is going to be that's true, because we are very interested in getting this fixed. We feel terrible that the Menloves and anybody has had to go through this. The Menloves are the only ones that live up there full time that had this freezing, and so of course we feel horrible. Now I will let Rob talk about more of the communication with them, but from what I understand from what Rob told me and all the communication we were communicating back and forth, he said that they did talk about getting a water tank, but then the Menlove said they were going to go a different direction, and they've explained why they wanted to do that. But when Rob checked on them several times, they said that they were okay and that they were dealing with it. And even though that's not a great solution, we just took them at their word that they were muddling through. And we did not realize until their complaint that how really stressful that all was. And I wish we had known better, at the beginning, what we could have offered. We didn't know what to offer. We didn't have the knowledge. And I know that's not an excuse. It's just the reality that, we didn't know better what to offer. And the things that we looked into, we were just finding were not possible. And meanwhile, we're talking to Garden City, we're talking to Sweetwater. They're having mainline freezing too, and they're putting heat blankets on and not getting any results from that. So we were very much trying to be in communication with other entities that were having this problem, looking for a solution, and we just didn't find anything that we thought would work. And so we kind of waited it out. And I just am so sorry that they went through that stress. As far as, so I assume this is going to be a question, so I'm going to go ahead and answer it. We assumed it was the main that froze and not simultaneously two other homes. And, because the coincidence of having two homes on the same day be frozen at the same time is probably, not very likely. And so we did assume that it was the main line that froze, but I don't know that we have evidence of that. And so our assumption is what everybody else's assumption was, is that the main line was frozen and not those personal lines. Now, whether or not the personal lines then froze immediately, we have no technology to know if that happened. But regardless, they were out of water, and that was definitely not a good situation. So that's all I have to say. I don't know if you want to let Rob add in his details at this point.
Thank you, Mrs. Henninger. That's all you have. I think I would like Mr. Wilson to provide whatever testimony he would like to provide at this point. And then I will let the Menloves cross-examine whomever they would like, specifying who the questions are directed to. I think that will be more efficient. So let's proceed that way. Mr. Wilson, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good morning, close to afternoon. Do you swear to tell the truth here today?
I do.
Okay, thank you very much. You were sworn. Please go ahead and testify however you'd like.
Okay, I'm gonna address I think one of the things that saddens me the most, and that is I did say that we didn't have anyone to flush, but I never did say that we weren't going to flush. And as a matter of fact, I did the flushing. The association president helped me do flushing. That is Tony Hudson. I got him to help me because I couldn't come in the middle of the week because of my job. And the reason why the Menloves didn't see any evidence in their road of this is because it snowed every other day. Every time I went up there, I had to dig out the hydrants, all of them. The snowfall this year was crazy. I even had Tony Hudson, who does the snow removal, helping me keep those as cleared as possible, the ones that he could get close to. In other words, he would take his equipment and get as close to the hydrant as physically possible without hitting one, which they did. They did hit one in helping me keep them clear. But that wasn't enough. I still had to dig out each hydrant that I was flushing every time I came over there. And the days that I did it were Friday evenings or Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And on the weekends, most of the time that I did it was at daylight, just in time for me to have enough light so that I could get that done. And a lot of times I did it so that I could get a water sample on that day to get our monthly water sample in. I would time it for that. But we did do the flushing. I had help doing it. I think that just before their water froze, the water temperatures were coming down, and I know that that Martell mentioned that you could tell the flushing had been done because of the snow melting. Well, on most years, that's true. It would be out on the road a little bit sometimes. You could see the hole, the water goes down. But every time I came back, within a day or two, those holes were filled with snow, blowing snow. And let's see. Just so that you know, John, even after the main line froze there, I went up and was still opening the other hydrant that's uphill from them. And in other words, as Martell put it, towards the source of the water. I was opening that and flushing, hoping that bringing the warm water to there would maybe hurry the process of thawing the rest of it out. And that line, just so the Menloves know, that hydrant was never frozen, and it's close enough to their home that they were safe from fire. I had talked to the city, Riley in the city, and he suggested that I put a black bag over the hydrant that wasn't working so that the fire department would know that. And I put a bag over it after it had froze, and it got buried. And one of the times that I tried to dig it up just to check it, the black bag was gone, and I put another garbage sack over it. But that line down below them was always open. It never froze. I mean, the hydrant. So I think that's about all I got. I can answer some questions for you if you want.
Well, if that's all you have right now that you'd like to testify about, I will turn it over to both Mr. and Mrs. Menlove to cross-examine either one of you, Mr. Wilson or Mrs. Henninger. I will request Mr. and Mrs. Menlove, whomever it is, one at a time, one questioner at a time, please identify who the question is posed to as between Mr. Wilson or Ms. Henninger. And why don't we start with Mr. Menlove? You're free to ask any questions of the two witnesses that have just testified.
Thank you. I'll direct my questions based on the testimony I heard, but if either of them feel more qualified or better to answer those questions, I understand that also. First of all, I think I heard Ms. Henniger say that they don't ask people to run water for them. Did I hear that accurately?
Yes, that's true. Even though we do benefit from it, that's not the reason we ask people to run it.
So did you ask some individuals to run water this past winter?
I did not ask anyone, but Rob can tell me if this isn't correct. He did ask Steve Randall, who owns a cabin at the top of your lane, and he's not a permanent resident there. He asked him to be sure and run his water because he thought that would help us. And Steve agreed to that.
Yes, I understand that, and I appreciate your sharing that because that's the same information I have. Were there other people that were asked to run water?
Well, yeah, the letter states to everybody that we asked them, anybody to run water that could, and that they would be not charged for any overage.
Did you ask anyone besides Steve Randall to run water for you?
I don't recall asking anyone else personally.
So Cody Lundgren reports to me that you asked him to run water. And even as it got warmer, he asked if he could now turn it off, and you told him no. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I thought we were still talking about on your street. I'm sorry.
All right. So
yes, Cody did because of the area that down in A that he lives on does not have a circulator. It's not a part of the circulated water in A. And we've always had someone either run water or we flush the hydrants. And Cody's concern about the hydrant was every time we flushed that hydrant, the water ran down in his driveway. So we decided that the solution was to have him run a good amount of water, and he ran a lot of water.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, did anyone ever ask us to run water for them other than the letter?
Please direct the question to one particular individual at a time.
All right. Ms. Henniger, did anyone ask us to run water to help with Bridgerland water other than the letter we received back in November?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. You're asking if anyone asked you, the Menloves, to personally run water?
Yes.
No, we did not contact you personally. We just sent the letters.
Okay. And let me make sure you indicated that Riley Argyle, Mike from the Utah Water Association, I believe is what you said, and Darren Lutz have all told you that a bleeder is a better solution than digging up the line and fixing the problem by digging up the line. Is that accurate?
Mr. Menlove, please pose the question to some identified individual.
Okay. I'm questioning Ms. Henniger's testimony, so I guess I'm questioning her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to give that to Rob and let him answer that. He's the one who spoke with them personally. So will you direct that question to Rob? Thank you.
And you don't need to repeat it, Martell. Yes, all three of those people have stated that moving water in a cul-de-sac it's better to have a circulator, what I call a circulator, or some way to run that we can run water continuously 24 hours a day instead of just flushing once a week or twice a week.
Okay, I just want to make sure because that is inconsistent with the conversation that I have had with Darren Lutz. Okay? So next question again, and this was part of Ms. Henniger's testimony, so I guess I'll question it to her. I'm not sure I heard clearly. Did you give a date when Darren is supposed to be here to do this?
No, we have no fixed date on that.
All right. One of the, I need to have some additional clarification if I could about the bleeder. Can you, and I guess, Rob, you may be the best one to answer this question, so I'm directing it to you. Can you help me understand how the bleeder, where it will be placed, how much water will run through it, where the water will run that runs out of it, and those type of things?
Sure, I can. You want me to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay. We are going to go down to the end of your line, and we are going to put, we're not going to have a meter, but I'm going to call it a meter box. We're going to have a meter box where we can access the valve, and they are going to put in a I guess you'd call it a leach pit or a place for the water to go. And we will be able to control that valve to either run a little bit of water depending on the temperatures that we get, or we can open it all the way up to a 1-inch line. And we've been told that that is sufficient when you're running 24 hours a day. That is more than efficient to keep that line from freezing.
So, Mr. Delaney, may I continue with some questions?
Absolutely. Feel free.
Okay, so Rob, the leach pit will be located in the road, in the property owner's property up there. Where will that be located?
That is yet to be determined depending on the slope and after they get into the ground. But it's more than likely, according to Darren, it's more than likely, the best downhill slope that won't affect anybody.
Okay. Is there a downhill slope that won't affect anybody?
Yeah.
Where will that be?
These are questions that I think that Darren's going to have to answer to me. We haven't set an exact date. He's way behind on all of his other stuff, but all that will be determined when they start to dig and they really get a good look at what we're going to be doing. Okay,
because what you're describing to me, I'm envisioning that happening on Steve Randall's property, and I've asked Steve Randall about that, and he doesn't know anything about that. Is that accurate?
It's not going to go on anybody's property but our own.
All right.
We own the property past Steve Randall's.
I understand you have a 10-foot buffer on that side, right?
Yeah. It will not, if we have to run that line 200 feet, that's what we'll do. It will be determined. The best route will be determined when we start to dig and see what the grades are and the slopes and all that. We're not going to be going on anybody else's property.
Okay, let me just ask one more clarification, Rob. You indicated that the line that would bleed would be a 1-inch line because a 1-inch line would be sufficient no matter how cold it got. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, that if I said that, that's accurate, but it's actually going to be, I'm sorry, it's going to be a 2-inch line. It's a 2-inch line that we're going to put in. I was thinking 1 inch because that's the size of line that a lot of people like to run to their house. I'm sorry. It's going to be a 2-inch line. A 2-inch. What they're going to do is put a saddle on the main line and run a 2-inch line out to a corp stop valve that we can control.
Okay.
And it's going to be in a meter box so that we have full control of that valve.
All right. Back again, Rob, I guess you're answering these questions. Riley Argyle, Mike with the Water Association, and Darren Lutz. Are any of those individuals water engineers?
I don't know.
All right. Just maybe more a comment than a question, Mr. Delaney, is I find it interesting that they are going to put in a 2-inch line because that's what is needed to keep the water circulating. And yet they're blaming me for not running an 1/8 of an inch water and causing their line to freeze. There seems to be some inconsistency there.
Can I comment on that, John?
Sure.
Martell, I am so sorry that this all happened. You have no idea how sorry I am. And I did not intend to blame you for anything. Okay. While we were on our break, I looked at those, our conversation on text, and I don't believe that my intent was to blame you. I think my intent was probably out of frustration. I just want you to know personally that I did not mean to blame you. I don't blame you. We just want to resolve this. We just want to make it so that you and your wife can enjoy your home up there and not worry about this anymore. That's all we're trying to do. And we've discussed this with many people, and this is the fix that most of them are telling us to do. So we're going to rely on those professionals that this is what we should do.
So, Rob,
and let me just add, A and part of B, A, B, and C sections. And John, this is the different areas that have a circulator in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Being good.
That actual circulator is a 1-inch circulator. We turn it on in the fall. We rarely have any issues. And I can't even remember the last time we had an issue on that circulator. So we know it works.
Okay.
What we're doing isn't exactly a circulator, but the main line out in the main road is going to have a circulator going past their cul-de-sac. Plus, we're going to have the ability to open up that bleeder, as a lot of people are calling it, the circulator valve, and get even warmer water to that area 24/7. And we feel, and we're not the only ones, feel that this is going to be a great fix.
So, Rob, in your construction and connecting with with Garden City, I've noticed a couple of Sunrise Engineering trucks near that project. I assume they are providing engineering for that project. Is that accurate?
Correct. They're the ones in charge of that project, but that's a total separate issue.
But I understand that, but wouldn't it be easy to ask them what the correct fix would be rather than Riley, Mike, and Darren, who really don't have the expertise to answer that question?
Sure. I'd be willing to talk to them too. Sure.
And Rob,
I'm not involved with that part of the project, but I can sure ask them. Sure.
And Rob, just so you know, I don't want to make this personal either. Okay. But I've reviewed our text messages also, and I think you can see how I took them as me being blamed for whatever.
I did see that. That's why I'm apologizing to you.
Right.
I did not intend, Martell. You know, you and I have always had a great relationship.
I thought so.
I've always kind of looked up to you as far as your knowledge and all that. But you know, we're trying to do the best we can. We tried to do the best we could for you. It just saddens me that it's gotten to this point when we're really trying to fix this thing. We really are. Okay.
I think that ends the questions I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Menlove. Those were helpful. I appreciated those. Mrs. Menlove, do you have any questions that you would like to ask either witness?
No, I appreciate the response that we've been given from Ms. Henninger, and I appreciate Rob's response and the description of the plan and the fact that the construction will take place. I'm pleased that he's going to talk with an engineer from Sunrise Engineering. That's been a concern I've had. I have great respect for Riley. He's a great guy, good technician, but his expertise is not engineering. And Darren is a great guy too. He's a competent professional in his profession. I just would feel more comfortable and if an engineer said, yes, this is the correct route. That just is one more confirmation, and it sounds like Rob's open to that, and I appreciate that. So we're anxious to get this resolved, and I can through this hearing I've learned that Rob and Ms. Henninger are anxious to get this resolved as well. So if that can be done, we will be very, very pleased. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will have a few questions. Just my comment on what, basically what just kind of was discussed is, whatever you guys are talking about and agreeing to here during this hearing, I'm going to leave it up to you guys to follow through or not follow through. It's up to you. So just FYI, you guys continue to dialogue as appropriate and work towards a resolution. That's great. I have a couple of questions for Bridgerland, and I think it probably makes, well, it's going to be one for each. But I'll start with Ms. Henninger, and please, Ms. Henninger, if you would like Rob to answer, please just say so. The first question is to Ms. Henninger, and I believe you said, and I want to confirm this is accurate, is that you have never identified exactly where this freeze occurred relative to what was distinguished earlier as a personal line versus a main line. Is that accurate testimony?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, Mr. Wilson, I will ask you, do you agree with what Ms. Henninger just said to my question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, this is a question directly to Mr. Wilson. Help me understand what I heard Mr. Menlove testify about, what he understood based on what he learned from Mr. Ted Wilson in 2019, is that running a trickle at one's house does in fact impact the bigger system. That's the testimony I heard. Given that testimony, do you agree with that testimony? Is that accurate, Mr.
Yes, I believe so, because there's no way it couldn't impact,
Okay.
because it has to go through the main line to get to the personal line. So it's just a matter of physics. It's going to impact. Yes.
Okay. So then the follow-up question would be, and this is news to me that you both, Bridgerland and the Menloves, brought to my attention, is that there was this third party named Mr. Randall. And Mr. Randall was asked to run water. That's what I heard. So I'm going to stop there and ask the question. Mr. Wilson, was that a request to run water different than what we have called the trickle?
Yes.
Okay, so stop there. Explain to me the difference, please.
Well, my dad, Ted Wilson, has for a long time had Mr. Randall run water because he could do it outside of his house. And he lives on quite a hill, and there was no chance of any damage to anyone else's property or any damage to his property. He would run more than a trickle out of a hose bib into a hose and out away from his cabin as soon as my dad said, hey, the temperatures are such and such. And it was to help keep the whole line system up that cul-de-sac open.
Okay. Thank you very much. You have answered actually another question that was baked into the first one, but you answered both questions. Thank you. Give me 1 second to review my notes. Okay. A few more questions, and these are a little more general, but what I think I've learned specifically today and got an inkling about based on the filings is that what I will call the Bleeder Cedar Ridge project is different from the Garden City Connection project. Is that accurate, Ms. Henninger?
That is accurate.
Okay. So when on the Cedar Hill / Bleeder project, when is that going to occur? And I'll ask Mr. Wilson that question based on his interactions with the contractor, and then I can also ask Ms. Hennigers.
Okay. So I've been in touch with Darren Lutz, the contractor that's going to do the work. Pretty much every week, if not every other week, since June. And I'm sure that the Menloves know this, that they've been really busy in Sweetwater fixing lines up there also. And I'll make a long story real short. I think it was 2 days ago, I contacted him and I said, look, I'm really starting to get concerned. We're getting towards the end of the season. You've got these projects for us we got to do. I understand he's had some sickness in his health. They've had some real issues and some emergencies that they've had to take care of. And I could, if you need me to, I can show you the text. He said, do not stress. I will take care of this. No dates are set, but he said he would take care of it this season. So my best guess is they're going to get started on it here real quick. And if they don't, they're going to start hearing from me every day instead of every few days.
Okay, thank you very much. Follow-up question now that given this distinction between the two projects, and I'll pose this to Ms. Henninger because this question comes from directly the submission that was provided by Ms. Henninger on behalf of Bridgerland on July 16th about the status update with respect to Garden City and the connection. And so everybody recalls the context is that as part of the last rate case on behalf of this entity, Bridgerland Water, rates were adjusted in part to be able to create the funding to pay for the connection to Garden City, which is a different issue than the Cedar Ridge issue. But nonetheless, was represented in that hearing as yet another, I guess, tool that might help the freezing issue. So given that that's related to what we're here for today, I want to find out from Ms. Henninger, based on her July 16th, 2023 update, where we stand. So the first question is, the representation was made that we are still trying to get all the final information the state needs to close on the loan. So the question is, have you gotten the state everything?
Yes, so we did close on the loan July 26th. And we finally got money transferred to us last Friday. So, but the construction company, Next Construction, did begin in July, I want to say near the 1st of July, maybe the 10th-ish. So they're full steam ahead.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be done this season. So we'll see if they can pull it off. There's you know, we're relying on Garden City doing their part too. So we'll see if we can connect all the dots, but yeah, we're
Okay.
hoping.
So you answered a couple other questions I was going to have that were follow-up, so thank you. The last question I'll ask you, and I'll ask you very directly. You make a representation in that filing that the project is set to finish around October 10, 2023. My question to you is, are you still confident about that date as a date of completion?
I'm not confident about it. In fact, we sent an email 2 days ago to get some specific updates on dates. So we haven't heard anything different than October 10th. But
Okay, so I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. You said you sent an email. Sent an email to who?
sent an email to the project manager at Sunrise Engineering.
Okay.
For an update on specific dates and just a general update, but also an update on time because we wanted to have some information on that. And we haven't heard back yet. I think
Okay.
they're trying to get an update. Yeah.
Okay, so as far as you know, the 10th doesn't make you feel, you're not real confident in the 10th and the steps you've taken to find out if there's a new date, you're waiting to hear back. Is that an accurate summary?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so that's all the questions I have. Is there anything else that anybody would like to say or like to ask questions of?
Yes, Mr. Delaney, can I just make a comment about your last line of questioning?
Sure, feel free.
We live here. We drive by this Garden City Connection project almost daily. There has been considerable work done on 2 pump houses. There's been some work done on a line from the lower pump house up to the next road that heads to the north. I don't recall the name of that road. I'll just be honest with you, this project is not going to be completed. Based on my observation, it's my opinion that this project is simply not going to be completed this year. And we saw a period of time in August when Next Construction was here working, doing a lot of work. I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen anyone from Next Construction here for, I don't know, there's been a pile of plywood by the lower pump house that's been sitting there for 2 weeks. There's a pile of plywood by the upper pump house that's been sitting there for about that same period of time. Again, I'm anxious for that to happen. I wish it would happen today, but I just don't know how that's going to happen.
Thank you very much for that comment. Does anybody else have anything further?
I would like to make a comment, Mr. Delaney, and basically ask a question. We've been through 2 winters without water. And one winter we had some gracious neighbors that allowed us to come to their home and shower and do a batch of laundry now and then. Those people have ill health now, and we don't want to be imposing upon them. So this last round, we drove to Logan to our daughter's home where we could take a shower and do our laundry and get water, fill our water containers, and that worked. But that was at personal expense, our personal expense. And I want to know what the recommendation is if, in fact, this winter we have a repeat situation. If, in fact, things are not able to be done, I would like some guidance from someone about what we do if we don't have water again. And I'm hoping that I'm really hoping that everything works out. That's my hope. We love being in our home, and it's stressful not having water. But I also want to have some indication of reasonableness about having what I believe is a kind of contractual agreement that we have with Bridgerland Water that we'll have water to our home. And I understand there are lots of, moving parts to this whole situation, but I don't want to get back in this situation of not having water. I guess I'm just saying, what is a reasonable accommodation when you don't have water in your home? And I doubt that answer can be given today, but I want that question to be out there, that we're going to come back and seek some guidance from someone if, in fact, this happens again.
Okay, so who are you asking that question of?
Maybe I'm just putting that question out there, Mr. Delaney.
That's fair. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that, but that's, certainly.
Yeah, I'm just putting that out there. And if in fact this happens again, I'll be definitely asking the Public Service Commission and the Wilsons about what is a reasonable thing for us to expect that we need to do to handle the situation. So the question's out there. That's just something I'm concerned about. We've been through it twice. I don't want to be in that situation again where there's dispute. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The one thing I'll leave you all with before we adjourn is that I recommend active communication if there is, especially if there are big issues that arise suddenly. Communication, in my experience, is while it can be tedious, it never is too much, because if people understand what's going on, at least they're not left guessing. And that has always, in my experience, been helpful. They may not like the answer, but at least they're not guessing at the wrong answer. And so, of course, I recommend and encourage people to talk and try to work things through. But I also understand at the same time, sometimes that can't happen. So don't get me wrong about living in a utopia. I'll just leave you with that. And if we have nothing further, I'll just close with that. We'll take the complaint under advisement and issue a written ruling shortly. And I really want to thank everybody for their time today, their participation, and the clear preparation that you all put into being here today and providing a lot more information. I thought it was very helpful. So thank you very much, and we will be adjourned.